Welcome to rePROs Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jennie Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, rePROs. How's everybody doing? I'm your host, Jennie Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So, y'all, I'm really excited for today's episode, and I'm going to really just keep my intro short. I had the guest who was going to come talk to you fall through. She had some flight issues, and so we had to reschedule. And so she'll be back soon. Don't worry. You will have a great conversation with her coming up in the next couple episodes. Don't worry. But I am so lucky to have a wonderful friend like Tarah Demant who stepped up and said she would help me make sure that we still got an episode to y'all today. So I had Tarah come and help me do an Ask Me Anything episode. So I guess with that, I will turn this episode over to Tarah Demant from Amnesty. Hi, Tarah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello. Thank you for letting me temporarily take over your podcast.
I know. I'm so excited. First, I will do this one hosty thing and I'll hand it over. Do you want to introduce yourself and include your pronouns? And then it's all you.
Yeah, I would love to. My name is Tarah Demant. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm with Amnesty International USA. And I'm really excited to be an interloper here and lead this great podcast. So today, welcome to rePROs Fight Back. And we are running an AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything, which I definitely had to look up because I am not cool and don't know acronyms or the internet. But this is some of the questions that you, our listeners, sent in and want to hear more about your intrepid host. So I will be kicking some questions to you. Jennie, are you ready?
I hope so.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. So the first question I think is helpful for everyone, which is, how are you preparing for the forthcoming SCOTUS ruling?
So I guess I can't say like hiding under my bed and crying. Like that's probably not helpful.
It might be real. I mean, if that's like what you're doing, right? I might have some suggestions, but it might be the answer.
So like a number of things, definitely lots of rage donating, mostly to abortion funds. Because y'all, they're going to need the money. I just did my latest round to the Roe Fund in Oklahoma because Oklahoma just has like a total abortion ban that went into effect. So that's a real problem, and not just for Oklahoma, but like that's where everybody from not everybody, but a lot of people from Texas were going to get their abortions. So just again, things are going to be really bad. So I'm lucky in that I am able to donate. So I have been doing donating. I also went on a spree of buying a bunch of fun abortion fund t-shirts this last weekend, which I didn't need. But I mean, honestly, do you ever not need them? So I got a bunch more of those. I have also been thinking about the things like the things I'm preparing like for work, right? Like making sure like all of our press releases are ready and like thinking about things that we need to talk about, like how is this going to have an impact globally, not just in the US, but also thinking about the podcast and like what topics or what things do we need to talk about on here that are going to be helpful for other people. So in that area, I'm thinking of like digital security, like what things should I be talking about for people who are in a state where abortion might get criminalized? Like what are things that they need to think about around digital security if they're going to go get an abortion? So I'm just trying to think of episodes that would be helpful in ways that I can help out. So that's kind of where my head has been at. I'm sure you have some suggestions too. So what have you been doing?
Well, let me first dig in a little bit to what you've been saying. So, oftentimes I think when people are like, what are you doing? And like the first answer for lots of us is like donating to abortion funds, right? And I'm usually very wary of capitalistic solutions to systemic problems. And I would say if people have funds, this is a capitalistic problem as well, which is if you have funds to donate, please do. And of course, get your amazing abortion merch. And partly because, of course, it provides financial support to the abortion funds that are making these great t-shirts, but also because it is a way of showing your solidarity. And I was recently in Vermont wearing my Everybody Loves Somebody Who Has Had an Abortion t-shirt from NNAF. And I was stopped by like 4 or 5 older women in like somewhat discreet situations where someone would sort of come over and whisper like, oh yes, that's really, really good. Right. And this is like in a really, really liberal space. And the sort of opposite example of that is I was wearing my Fuck Abortion Bans t-shirt from T-Fun down in Texas 2 months ago, I think. And many, many people were like clearly just really glad to see someone supporting abortion, and lots of people in Texas support abortion, right? So they were glad to see someone else supporting the thing they also did, whether or not they have a t-shirt, right? And so I think one of the ways to think about when you're wearing abortion merch is the way that we're trying to create solidarity and conversation with each other, as well as like give your money to abortion funds. Absolutely. If you've got an extra dollar, boy, make it count.
But like destigmatizing, like even just wearing a shirt that says abortion is like big.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things I'd think about too for all of us is like, what are the ways in which like we are like, yes, donate your money, and like, friends, we are in this for the long haul. We're going to lose a lot, and it's going to be really tough, and we have to lay down the pavement before we can walk that road and win. So what are we doing to take care of each other, and what are we doing to take care of ourselves, and what are we doing to connect to our community? And like sometimes it's as simple and dumb as wearing a Fuck Abortion Bans t-shirt in Texas, where loads and loads of Texans are fully in support of human rights and abortion, and I know that I feel that solidarity when I see other people wearing abortion gear out in the wild, right? Obviously to protest, but like just out in the wild where I'm like, yes, my people, we outnumber them.
Like smile, like head nod, or like, oh my God, I love your shirt.
So that's, I think, a challenge for both of us who are, obviously very professionalized in this work, but also then like, what are the ways that we're taking care of ourselves and our community long term? And I think, and that's really tough in these moments of crises, right? So that's it's a plug for an abortion t-shirt or whatever merch, and obviously in this space that makes sense for you as a listener, but thinking about the way that we're continuing that conversation. And I think one of the challenges is like, and also like, where are those points of joy, right? Like this is just a really shitty time. And Jenny, I never know if I swear on your podcast, I'll try and load it back. Your listeners are probably like, who is this clown?
Yeah.
Talking
about fucking abortion bans.
We're talking about fucking abortion bans. So it's appropriate. But like, this is such a shitty time. And, lots of your listeners won't be prepping press releases because they don't work in an org, right?
Yeah.
And then that's not their job. And I think one of the questions is, how do we sustain ourselves in this moment, which is also like, are you doing yoga? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you drinking lots of water? And I mean this like hydrate, for God's sake. The abortion movement needs hydration. And like, what are the ways we're creating joy for each other? And even in the face of immense loss, right? How are we creating joy for each other? So what have I been doing? I mean, I've been donating to abortion funds. I have been obviously work stuff. I've been getting press releases ready. We've been launching campaign tags. We've been coordinating with state-based work. I mean, prepping for the state work. And that is a very tangible thing people can do. It's like whatever state you live in, whether it's a quote unquote good state or a bad state, like, who on the ground is doing that work in campaigning? Like, find out how you can be a part of that, because that's something you can control right now. Like, you can't control the Supreme Court, but also like, how are you just taking care of our community, right? Which is, how are we reaching out and checking in with each other? And not that it makes it better. It doesn't. It's really, really bad, but it makes it like we can survive this together and actually carve out pieces of joy. So yeah, I mean, I've been struggling with obviously the trying to create joy, but because there's so much we're going to lose, right? But like, I know that we will win. It's just that we have to get through this, and we have to do it together, and we can only win together, right? So in addition to donating and wearing abortion t-shirts, like same, like the exact top 10 things, like I've been trying to focus on things that I can control. And sometimes that's as simple as like, oh, the actual thing around the house I haven't gotten done in maybe 2 years, that finally I'm like, I will put that shelf back up, right?
Because oh my God, I've totally,
yeah, because like that's a way to actually exert control. And then also trying to think is, what is one thing I can control in this space that we can't control the Supreme Court, right? But I can control checking out the, like, I'm based like you in DC, and checking back in with the DC Abortion Fund and seeing what they need right now, or checking in if you live outside of DC in your state, like what is the movement going on there? And today, the one thing I did was check in on that. Like I didn't have to solve anything. I didn't have to, but I checked in on that. So yeah, but it's been tough. I mean, as you know, which, I mean, this dovetails really well into the next question from listeners, which is, there is so much happening right now. How are you dealing with burnout?
So this is like, I feel like always like complicated question, because burnout is like one of those things, there's not like a end. I mean, I'm sure at some point there is, but I don't feel it anytime soon. I feel like last year I went through, I'm hoping the worst of it. Lots of like crying for like the slightest reason, like you looked at me funny and like,
right.
I'm like crying on Zooms, and
yeah.
I'm hoping that was the worst of it. But I also do worry a little bit. I'm at the point where emotions are kind of dulled. Like, yeah,
yes, like, I worry about that.
I worry, like, I'm like, am I worse? Like, was like the crying the good part? And like, now I'm like so much more burned out, or have I gotten things more under control? I don't know. I'm not sure where that is, but I know like when the Supreme Court ruling came down, I was like, this really sucks. I'm mad, but I don't like feel mad. It's really hard. I don't know. It feels hard to explain. Like everything just feels a little muffled.
No,
and
yes.
Not good. Like I assume, like that can't be good.
Yeah. I bet a lot of your listeners are listeners now that I'm a co-host for the day. I bet a lot of the listeners, I mean, everything you said resonated so strongly with me. I feel like when the decision was leaked, I was shocked because we weren't expecting it to be leaked.
No.
Not shocked with the outcome.
I was having a perfectly pleasant Monday or Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I felt, more than anything, I felt empty.
Yeah.
And I felt like a bit of a golem, like a terracotta pot that's like, and that specifically, all the water had been dumped out. And if you know anything about gardening, terracotta seeps water. So, okay, so it's like a terrible way to plant things, actually. And I felt so empty. I remember thinking, I feel like a terracotta pot, which of course is a pun on my name I hadn't thought about. But like, I just like, I've just, all the water's dumped out and I have nothing to give. Like, I just like, I'd have this dullness to my voice when explaining, when someone would call me like, what is this? And I had to explain to our staff, and I had to explain to families and friends that, are in different lines of work or not paying as close attention, which of course, totally understandable. And I just felt dull, and like that dullness. I think that, look, like, I'm not a medical doctor, but there's a lot of research out there talking about how, like, we're not designed as bodies to take on the amount of trauma that we've been collectively experiencing over the last 6 years. And particularly with the end of the pandemic, but of course, like 4 years of real political violence being so present in the national daily life, which of course had been extremely present for a number of our community members, and particularly Black and Brown people. But like, we're not equipped to deal with this much trauma. And I do wonder how much of this is a continuation of that impact. But I do think it's, I really appreciate you sharing that, one, because I feel the exact same, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk lately, which sucks, but I would guess a lot of your listeners have the same thing. And I think that these are also really classic symptoms of anxiety and depression, which to me, having thought about this, as I thought, yeah, but like, it just feels super normal that in the face of like unspeakable horror, you would feel this way. And that's also true. But I do think it's a good plug for folks to be plugged into mental health professionals. I think about that too, the way that this has sort of weighed on all of us living our normal mental health lives, right? And that now it's a question of like, it's normal to feel bad and empty, but it doesn't, is that the way we have to live? And I don't know, that's deeply, deeply personal. And I think that like, it's not advice for folks, but I do wonder, and I wonder how you and I can think about that too. Like, what does it mean, again, to want to find joy in a really, really fucked up world?
So I'm trying to be proactive and know that things are like, June's going to be bad. right? Like I know June's going to be bad. So I am actually off next week. And I am, so like the week when y'all are listening to this, I am off. I will hopefully be staying mostly off of social media. It's a curse and sometimes you still go on, but I'm really going to make the effort to not be there. I have no plans. I don't have anything planned I'm going to do. I am just going to do what makes my heart happy. And honestly, if that's nothing, it's nothing. And I'm looking forward to that. Watching some bad TV, reading some lovely books. I just, that's where I'm at. And I'm really looking forward to it.
And I think that unplugging, there's like an app for that you can be like, don't let me social media between the hours or whatever. Like the internet's figured out a solution for itself. but like unplugging is a central part of being plugged in. And I think for me, and again, I'd assume that lots of your listeners, that I can feel sometimes a guilt when I'm not like top of my game and like 100% in the fight at this very moment.
I need to do all the things
all the things all the time, or I personally
am a bad advocate.
I'm a bad advocate. And like, I am the reason, et cetera. And like, there's no small amount of hubris there, but it's also, I think, the guilt and the weight that all of us feel who are in this movement, who care about this because of how important it is. It is natural then to feel that weight. It's personal. Right? And so how can people unplug even at this, the most crucial moment? How can you take a breath so that you can breathe in, so that you can come back to breathe out, right? Like, no, I'm really, really glad you're off next week. And I have a number of bad television I will be sending you. Like so much. I have bad television is all I watch. Someone once asked, like, what was it? Do you watch like 24, The Handmaid's Tale? I was like, no, I watch cartoons. Like I don't watch like Bob's serious
Burgers
TV these
gets
days.
me through so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And if for folks that can watch horror and like really serious, like good for you. That's great. I don't think that's anything bad, but my brain's like, nope. Like we're dealing with that all day long. We're going to watch some really like questionably written bad TV. Where the joke is how bad it is. Yeah. Maybe when this publishes, we'll go back online.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Great British Baking Show can only do so much, right? Like that really got me through a while. Like, you can tell when things are like bad. I'm like, I need to watch Great British Baking Show.
I mean, it is just like a, Xanax to the soul, right? Like, and also I think this is, I mean, again, not a mental health professional, like, but there's something to be said. I do this a lot where when things feel the most out of control, I do something that is very physical. Obviously not exercise, which would be healthy for me. And my doctor's like, please God, exercise. And I'm like, okay, it's just not going to happen. But like my heart rate is always the wrong weight or whatever, but like that, like I'll bake something, and I know you bake a lot, and like, or I'll fix something around the house, or I'll build something, or I'll go out into the garden. I'll do something with my power tools. Like I love power tools. I am my father's daughter, like, but something that's really corporal because it's like so contained, right? Whereas this is the fight of our lives.
Done.
And it's done. Yeah. And then when you bake that
thing, I have this thing.
Yeah. And then you're like, and then I ate this thing. So I would strongly recommend to all you listeners out there, what is one thing that you can do? And you don't have to do it well.
No.
Like, you don't have to be a master knitter to knit something, or a master baker. Like do a thing that has an end point. And then be like, I made this. It kind of sucks. Oh, well, like, Yeah. I mean, the problem is, Jennie, you have set the baking bar very high. So I do love the idea of next week when you're off of Social Illness Points, those of us that are still on, going through and doing a bake off on your Twitter feed to see all the great stuff. Like, what are people doing to take care of themselves? I think that's actually, as you're listening to this podcast, like on Twitter, under the show, what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
Because we need every single one of us in this fight, which means we need to be able to step out of this fight for a moment and take a breath.
Yes. And if you need to step away. Because I mean, it's not just a saying. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And like, it's a relay race too,
and it's
right?
a relay race. It is a baton race.
Step away.
Yes.
You need to step away. And you're not bad. Like, nope. It's fine.
That's right. Pass me the baton and I will pass it off when it's time for me. And then I'll come back in on the next, I don't know how relay race. Do you come back in on relay races? But like, this is a recurring relay race, right? Like, you pass the baton so you can take a break, and then someone else runs around and they'll pass it back to you. So yeah, it's a good metaphor because it's really real.
Yeah. And like, you also need to know that you can't do all the things, right? Yeah. Like, I have really figured out over the last several years that like big crowd-based things give me anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the March for Our Lives and started to have like a mini panic attack. Like I was fine until I wasn't, and I
Right.
needed to be out of there, and I couldn't get out of there very easily.
Mm-hmm.
If you were there, like there weren't
Mm-hmm.
easy exits.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't do that to myself anymore. So like I always feel guilty for not going to like marches, but I'm like, it is not good for me. So I need to do other things. And like, so
Yeah.
finding what your things are that make you happy and like that you like doing are the things that are good to do.
Yeah. And also like, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. You know, a restaurant needs lots of different types of workers. You need someone at the front, you need someone who cleans, you need someone who cooks, you need someone who eats. Like, you know, you need all those things. And that's the same with the movement, right? So yeah, I mean, sure, I find those really invigorating, and that I'm tired and cranky. But you know, that's not the only way. That's just a very visible way to make change. And it can be very cathartic, but it's
I like
just
the small things at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Because like it's the smaller crowd generally. And like that, I feel that one has been better for me doing those. I haven't done it since the pandemic, but
I think, well, yeah, gosh, the plague, right? I think the other thing is, right, there's things that feel like they're the right thing because they're very visible. And one of the questions, right, is like, what can you do right now? And it might not be the thing that hits the photo on the paper. And for those of us that are based in DC, like that is where the photo gets taken, right? At the court. And you're like, oh, I should have been there. It's like, or not. You should have been calling your auntie to have that conversation that, you know, they've been putting off, or like talking to someone who needed a mental health break together to talk to how hard it is, or like taking your own break because you need to be ready for the movement, right? Like, so those are really visible, and obviously they're like really Instagrammable to prove like, don't worry, I got my merit badge. I did my like abortion merit badge today. But like, yeah, the movement needs accountants too, y'all. Like, you know, do the thing that you can do, and we need that thing. Yeah. That, you know, so gosh, just one of the questions that's also from the AMA and is really related is like, what is it that made you so passionate about this issue? When you're thinking about the tactics that now are life-giving to you, but like, what is it about this issue that made you want to get involved? I mean, did you always want to be involved in reproductive rights?
Oh my God, no. If you were to like go talk to like little Jennie and we're like, you're going to be like working on abortion or whatever. So little Catholic school Jennie would have definitely been like, what? I don't know about that. But I also can like trace it back to there. So like, I always say that like, I didn't have like a big aha moment, but there were like seeds planted like throughout my life. So and I feel like I tell this story a lot, but it really was big to me for like a number of reasons. And again, I went to Catholic school, and a girl in my class asked me if I wanted to go with her to go to Madison to go save babies. And I was like, I mean, yeah, obviously, like I would love to go save babies. And like going home and like, hey mom, can I go with so-and-so to go to Madison and save babies? And her being like, okay, let's sit down and have a conversation. And she did it in a very, I found, very important way. She didn't tell me like, this is what you should think or that is wrong. She really sat me down and was like, well, have you thought about what about this situation? Or what about this? What if this is happening? Or she just like gave me a fuller picture and then said, if you still want to go, you can go. And she gave me the agency to make my own choices with more information. And that was ground changing, not just for planting repro seeds, but like for life, right? Like learn more about the issue and then make up your own mind. And I know so many people who weren't raised that way, right? Like this is what you should think. And like, to me, that was just like really groundbreaking that's how my mom approached it. And like, I remember talking to her later and being like, this was like so important to me. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So to her, it was just like another day, but it really stuck with me. Like I can picture sitting in the sunroom at the counter. Like I can see it.
Right.
It's so funny. And then again, Catholic school. So I had sex ed from a nun who, as you can imagine, was very education
Right.
about sex ed, right?
Super fact-based.
Yeah, super fact based. Like I always just say I had the mean girls sex ed education, right? Like you're gonna have sex, you're gonna get this horrible disease, and you're gonna die. And so again, like that did not make me like it go all in on repro. And it's just like
Mm-hmm.
things that came back later when I started getting more involved and being like, I don't want anybody to get that shit education I had. Like, it
Mm.
did not prepare me for life later. Like, that is terrible. Let's make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else. And then just like all of a sudden, it was just like the passion and fire just exploded. But yeah, if you were like
Mm-hmm.
to go back and tell younger me, like, I could never imagine that this would be what I'm doing for a number of reasons. Like, I couldn't imagine myself talking on a microphone about something because like that's not my jam either, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something I really have found I really enjoy doing.
Yeah. I grew up in a really conservative town too, in a rural space. I grew up in
Yeah.
California, but like in a really rural town. And my parents were like the only Democrats in town. And they weren't like particularly hyper progressive, but, you know, comparatively. And I don't know that there was really an aha moment either, right? You just,
Yeah.
at some point, you're just like, yeah, doy, like, you got to do this work. There's no women's liberation without this. There's no LGBT equality without this. There's no racial equity without this, right?
Like it just was like baked in, right? Like my
Yeah.
mom was like really in, and I'm sure you have this in a similar way, but like my mom was very much into service and like she
Mm,
served on a lot of boards and did a lot of volunteering. So like it was just like baked in. And so, like I said, not an aha moment, but like things that happened that like triggered, like, yeah, no, this is not cool. So like I had a roommate in college who was very conservative and part of like a really conservative religion. And so was very like outspoken on like being pro life and anti gay and all these things. And like
mm-hmm,
just being like, whoa, 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 not cool, not okay. And
mm-hmm,
like, but it wasn't something that like I had like the aha moment. It was just like
mm-hmm.
that pushback right away. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, thinking about human rights more broadly, which I was doing sort of earlier, there was just a moment where it's like, you can't have any of this without abortion.
Yeah.
None of this happens without abortion. And that's true for a number of intersectional issues, right? But I think as like I mean, as a cis woman, also thinking, what does it mean to have equality in this world? And what does equity look like? And, you know, and those are big thoughts for some, you know, in college, they feel like gigantic thoughts, right? No one's ever thought this thought before.
Right. Never.
And now
Yes.
it's like these 12-year-olds who are like, yeah, obviously doy. And I think that was a big turning point for me is I was really focused in on women's rights work and sort of like a broad version of it. I do remember though, this was really going to date me. Probably your listeners are much younger and cooler, but it was really young. I must have been like 8. And we were going to a political rally and it was in Fresno. I grew up outside of Fresno and my mom went, it was for the Democratic candidate. And oh gosh, I'll have to think of the year. And my mom went and there were people outside with those signs of like dismembered fetuses.
Oh, yes.
And my mom is like 5 foot. She's actually like 4'11". She likes to say she's 5 foot. She's not.
Yeah, I
She's like,
remember it being about my height.
yeah. She is 4'11". And she lost her shit. Like she just was like, how dare you? It was the Michael Dukakis rally, which will not resonate for loads of people who are under 40. But Michael Dukakis, RIP that campaign, who was a Democratic, who lost to
Yes.
George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush's father. And my mom just like she just went nuts. I mean, and I knew that she was pro-choice, which is how she would have said it then. But it wasn't something that she was like hyper passionate about. And then she was just like, no, these are lies. Like, these are lies and how dare you? And I remember being like, well, whatever's gotten her that fired up, I should probably figure this out. And then they came and like picketed our school too. We lived in this really rural town. Like I grew up in an extremely rural space, like 30 miles, maybe more, like to the closest city, which was Fresno, yes, in a town of about 1,000 people.
Oh, I feel
And
ya.
Yeah. Like, so I often say I grew up in the Midwest of California, and the folks with those big signs, the dismembered fetus signs, came to our school, and we lived in the house right across from the high school. Like, we're the one intersection in town. And like, so we were there. And then my dad
Oh my
also
God, I
was
love
just
it.
like,
The one intersection
we were
in
the
town.
literal one intersection in town.
I mean, I didn't live in the town where I went to high school, but I relate to that because that's what that was.
Yeah, it's like small town. And like, people have extremely strong heart beliefs around abortion. And most people opposed abortion on deeply religious grounds that I knew. And I, growing up, I was sort of like, yeah, abortion feels wrong. But then these people came with these signs. I'm like, oh no, they're lunatics, right? And then the more you learn, you're like, oh, this debate has been co-opted, and nothing I sort of thought about this was right. So again, not like an aha moment, but then you get here and you're like, there's no way that you can't not do this, right? It's nothing that I want in this world to be it happens without abortion. I think that's been a really interesting journey for me. Always you're supposed to do these visions, which is like, what's the world you want to be? And if folks that are listening that work in nonprofit, that's supposed to be the like thing you pitch to people, not the like things that are wrong. And all I am is like driven by intense fire hatred for the things that are wrong. Like, and just like, the sun, the fire of 1,000 suns of hate, and which is like such a shitty way to
which
live.
Is obviously why we're friends.
Which is why we're friends. And it's also like every mental health professional in the world is probably like, please no. So like, what's the world we want to live in, right? And like, what's the world we want it to be? And that's the vision. Like, none of that happens without abortion. And now it's just like so obvious. It feels like so obvious that we do this work, right? But it's so funny that you and I have had such parallel journeys.
I know, right?
What's something when you've been doing this work in the variations that you've done it, but like, what's something you're really proud of having achieved?
So this podcast, like, just in its entirety, like, I am inherently pretty introverted. I mean, I'm very introverted. So like the thought of doing something like this was a little terrifying, and I definitely rejected it when it came up. Mm-hmm. But I overcame all that, and I'm doing it. And so like, that's pretty amazing in and of itself. But I was terrified this year. We did an episode talking about intimate partner violence and how it's a repro issue. And I was so nervous to talk about it on there, talk about my experience with it. I really feel very lucky that I interviewed Monica Edwards for that. Like, I think together we found the strength to like tell our stories and like have a really, I mean, not light, but like not feel the stress of it in the moment, like telling each other the stories. And like, we ended up talking a long time after about a number of things, and like that really helped. But like, the thought of like when it came time to like push publish, like I just got like really nervous again. And I'm just like really proud of myself, because like that was like the first time I really talked about it, other than like kind of a really just glancing reference, maybe a little bit. Like I said, I'm inherently introverted, and I let people in, but like, maybe there's like a bit of a wall of like, you're in to here. And so it's felt like opening it a little further and like being more open, which I thought was a big step.
Well, and like to the World Wide Web. As the young folks call it, the World Wide Web. I mean, like, that's everybody, right? Yeah, no, that episode was so powerful and so good. I mean, all the episodes are so good. I think that, it can be very abstract when we talk about these issues, especially if you work in law and policy, and we're trying to like, we're trying to change law and policy and code and all these kind of like really technical, nerdy things. And like, as I adjust my glasses, and I'm like, let me tell you about the, the following treaties that we're violating, which again, I'm 100% going to do that every time.
But also, yes.
Yeah, but also, yes. But like, at the end, this matters because like, we all deserve to live lives of
people, right?
dignity. Like at the end, it matters because we're humans that have human experiences, and it's so powerful. It's very generous.
And I think it ties back to like the burnout, right? Like, it's easy to focus on the policies and things, because if I think about the people, like that's when I talked about like being really numb around SCOTUS. But when I started to think about like all of the people who aren't going to get access to abortion that they need, like that's when I started to cry. And so like, I can't focus on the people, because that's the part that just like utterly will break my heart. I need to think of the policy changes that need to happen to ensure that the people get the services they need. And so, but it is really important to bring it back to like that personal level, because that's why it's important.
Right.
But it's hard to focus on that, because like that's the part I feel like that just, it'll break me, man.
Yeah, well, because it's devastating.
Yeah.
Right? It's devastating. Yeah, I feel that. I think that, like, you know, I think one of it's also like, how do we find, again, like, man, all I'm doing is talking about joy. I feel like Oprah, because we're like $40 billion less wealthy, obviously. But otherwise, we're the exact same. Where it's like, how
do I
do
get
we
a card
find,
today? Oh
you
my
know,
God.
like yeah, you get a card. You get a card. I've got to use Tupperware if you want it. It's got some spaghetti stains on it, though, so sorry, it's not great. Like, you know, this is a dark time in the world, and it's a tough time. It's certainly definitely one of the darker timelines I've been in this multiverse called America, in terms of this, you know, moment. But this country's had lots and lots of dark times, obviously. But like, things are hard, and they're really bad, and they're really shitty, and like, we can't pretend they're not. But what we can do is still find joy and connection, and like, you know, and do these really hard things together joyfully. And there's a real privilege. I mean, there's certainly a real privilege to being able to professionalize that work and do that from 9 to 5, or in, you know, in DC from 10 to 8, whatever it might be. But like, no one comes in real early, but we don't roll home early either. But, you know, so there's a real privilege there, but it's also partly because it's like, it's a privilege to do hard things with friends. It's Paul Farmer, right? Who was the Physicians in Health, PIH, that was, I don't work that much in sort of global
Partners
health.
in Health?
Partners in Health, thank you. Partners in Health, who started that organization. They do a load of like targeting the most underserved spaces for healthcare and globally. And he founded this, I don't know, way back when, and recently passed away the last couple of months, somewhat early. He was like in his 60s. It was a real shock for the global health community. And one of his quotes, I was really moved by, you know, he'd been interviewed a number of times, and like, how do you stay hopeful, and blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, it's a pleasure to do this work. Like, it is to be able to do hard things with friends. Right. Which doesn't mean like the thing is not really crummy that you're doing, which is like, in, you know, looking at the like devastating impact of colonialism on like healthcare in Haiti. Right. But like, to do hard things with friends, you know, that's where that's a pleasure. Like, it's actually fun. It's good, and feel sometimes guilty.
And this community is amazing.
Yeah. Like, this community is amazing. And like, yeah, we're going to do really hard things. And we wish we didn't have to. It'd be so much better if we could just go do anything else, because this was taken care of. But like, we have the privilege of being together in this together, whether you're professionalized or not. Right. We will do hard things together. And that is fun. That is interesting. Yes. So yeah, no, that was a really powerful episode, and partly because it is about doing hard things together, having that conversation together, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've talked about on the podcast, thinking of other episodes, and also sort of dovetailing on the question of what you're proud of. You've talked about imposter syndrome a couple of times, and I'm wondering what advice you have for, I don't know, let's say the random listener out there, also known as myself, who, like, how do we get better at not feeling like a fake?
So this is like transparency of like, I really struggle with this one, but I also feel like, again, I'll take this back to my conversation with Monica, and like, when we were talking after the interview, so the part y'all didn't hear, we were talking about like the voice in your head. And I'm like, I don't understand like my imposter syndrome. Like, my parents didn't raise me that way. And I'm like, I just don't understand where it comes from. And I'm like, holy shit, is that where that voice is coming from? From like the person who kept saying I wasn't good enough, and like all of those things, that it has now become my internal monologue that I always refer to it as the Statler and Waldorf in my head. And some of y'all may be too young for that, but like,
no
that's
one's
how
too
I
young
feel.
For the Muppets.
Right. Like, I just feel like they're constantly in my head. Yeah. And so for a lot of it, I've run like mitigation strategies around it. Like, I just try to not give them space. So one of the things is like the podcast. Like that's like the one where I can think of like the clearest strategies like I've come across to deal with it is after I get done recording this with Tarah, I will have the little voice in my head being like, you said this wrong. You should have said this better. And like, you sounded stupid, or like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're talking about. And so I don't re-listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all I will hear, like Tara and I had this amazing, lovely conversation, and I will hear like, oh, but did you hear like this 2-second clip where you sounded like an idiot? Like, and that'll just like replay in my head. So like my coping strategy is to like not give it space. So I won't re-listen unless I have to for like editing, where I need to tell my editor that there's like a chunk we need to cut or something. So I try to not give it space, and I really just try not to listen to it. It's hard, and it's hard. And like, I also find it hard because I feel like I work with so many fucking amazing advocates, like Tara included, and I hear them talking about things, and I'm just like, y'all are so talented and so smart, and I am not that person. I feel like I get up and
what every single one of us is
right.
thinking.
And I think that's the important thing, which is why I try to keep talking about it, because I'm sure that some people feel that way about me. Like I may never get to that point, but like
for sure,
I'm sure that way to some people. And so like we all are impressed by these amazing people we are surrounded with and find that intimidating, and that feeds the voice. So like I really just try to do what I can to not give it space. And that has, for most of the part, has been pretty successful. And then I've also learned, I think, I can't remember if I talked about this on the podcast or not, but I have a really hard time with the word expert. It does not resonate with me. I cringe from it when someone's like, you're a repro expert. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I really have a hard time with that. And it's really like that word. So I had some coaching around podcasting, and I came up with that. So like, you're a podcast expert. And I'm like, no, I'm not a podcast expert. Like I have this podcast, but I'm not an expert. And like, really, it's like the word. So we were like looking up on this thesaurus, like other options. And like, it really seems to be like just the word expert. Like that makes me cringe. So we came up with, I'm a reproductive health and rights maven. And I
love the word maven.
I love maven. And that one doesn't give me a full body cringe.
I think, the question with expertise, right? Like, and I came from academia before I came from DC. And like expertise is this like heavily guarded word of like white male affirmation. And like, so like, I think one of the things when I've thought that like, oh, am I an expert in XYZ, right? Is like, well, first of all, like literally write down who is the expert then, like not like a person, but like, what would it be to me to have this expertise to you? And because if you think like it's only like 50 years of experience in the field, then it's like one woman and she's 80. Right. Like that's the only expert in this. Right. So one of the things is like, what are we thinking about who makes an expert? And then like, and who told us that's what expertise means. Right. And how is that guarded? So that's that's like a highly academic exercise. That's an extremely nerdy exercise. And the way I think about with imposter syndrome is like, I don't know how to like train myself to not feel a certain way, but what I can do is say like, what like white man is benefiting from me thinking this? Like who is benefiting when I think about this? And it's not people like, who are also thinking that they're imposters. Right. And like, I think that's the question, like who benefits from me being like, oh, well, I'm not an expert, blah, 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 blah. Right. Or like, oh, this is, if not, there was, it's true about everyone else, but not me though. Right.
Right.
And like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's been sold to us. And that's been sold to us, like particularly in professional spaces by men. And now like, and I think there are women that will do that now too. And which is just really disappointing. My white women, get your shit together. But like those types of rarefied species, like the question is like, who benefits if you say that, whether or not it's true? Cause I don't know. Am I an imposter? I have no idea.
Maybe.
What does it mean to be an imposter? Like, sure. But whether or not, like, what does it mean that that's what the definition means? And like, who got to define that? So yeah, I don't know how to like not have that thought except for to think like, this is just not useful.
No,
this is not useful.
and I'm trying to not let it hold me back, right? So like when it comes to like thinking of like looking at a job that I might apply for or something and being like, I'm not qualified for that. What do you mean? Like, don't just sell yourself short. Like, if you're like utterly unqualified, like that's one thing. But like if it's like
there's
nickling
loads of
around
studies
the
about
like
that, right?
margin,
like there's loads of studies about who applies for what, depending on their identity, both their gender and their race identity. And like for, this is in a shocking turn of events. Like women will not apply unless they meet like 95% of things listed on the thing, whereas men will apply if they meet 50. And then it also splits along racial lines too, right? So like, who's benefiting when we're like, I shouldn't apply for that. I only meet like 78% of the things. There's the one thing I don't meet, right? Yeah. This is everyone listening. You are good for that job. Go do it.
Just do it. And like, what's the worst that happens?
They don't interview you, right? Or you do it and you fail. Like, okay.
Next.
I failed at loads of things.
Yes.
You got to pay your rent, but that's like, figure that part out. Yeah. No, that's true. One of these things is like, it doesn't go away, right? I think that like, and I don't tend to read sort of memoirs. I find it a sort of odd genre, but you read memoirs of people that you think, oh, this person for sure
has it together,
will not be an imposter. This person, that's what I mean when I say someone's not an imposter. They're this person, you read the book and they're just like, I'm a total imposter. You're like, oh, okay, so that's just made up.
This is definitely you fake it until you make it. Like you just keep telling, you just like, fine, keep telling yourself you're faking it and keep doing it.
Faking it is the making it.
Yeah.
That's what there is. Every once in a while, I'll think, okay, I need the person who actually does this. And then you look around and that person does not exist. You're like, oh, I am that person. Okay, well, I wish I felt a little more like an adult. I mean, like I'm in my mid 40s and I'm still like, I just thought being an adult would feel a lot more adulty.
I thought I was supposed to know what I was doing now.
I thought, yeah. And now I think back to my parents and they're, at their age, and I'm like, oh my God, they had no idea. Because when you're a kid, you think, oh, they like parents really,
they know
you disagree with them. Obviously, you like think they're wrong, but they've got it figured out.
Yeah.
They just have the wrong answer to whatever you want to be doing. And now I'm like, oh no, they had no idea. Like, and my mom was like, yeah, we have no idea what we're doing. Why did you think that? I was like, I thought adults.
That's why you were adults.
That's why you're an adult.
And like there was one day where all of a sudden I was going to become this magical person and an adult.
Today you are a woman. Yeah.
And she will know all the things. Oh.
And I'll know all the things. Yeah. No, it is good news, everybody out there. No one really knows. There is no mold. You can do it. You'll be great. This podcast has been such a joy. I mean, it's such a joy for the movement, such a joy for me and so many listeners. What are the things that you listen to? Not your own. I would never. Gosh, I can't listen to my own voice. Partly because it's like I just hear my mother. Yeah. I'm just like, oh my God, my mother's coming right out of my mouth, whom I love, but did not want to sound like.
Yes.
So when other than this podcast, what are the other good podcasts?
Yeah, I listen to so many podcasts, so I'll just like do a couple that I love. I really love Maintenance Phase with Michael Hobbs and Aubrey Gordon. It's like, I would say like almost like the anti-wellness podcast. It's like debunking like BMI is total bullshit and this is why. Here's all the data for why it's wrong, and like goes after like diets. There's like an amazing Dr. Oz episode. Like,
oh my God, what a quack.
Yeah. So like amazing. I love that podcast. I also love You're Wrong About, which is like the same but like different, right? Like it's more pop culture moments, I would say. The one I just listened to today was about the McDonald's hot coffee case and like why what people know about it is like
it's like totally wrong.
It's totally wrong. And like this woman was like seriously injured, and it became like this joke of like, well, duh, of course coffee's hot, but it was like way beyond. It was like almost boiling.
My mom told me all about this. So I don't listen to that podcast, but my mom does, which is the same as listening to that podcast.
Right? So I love that. Okay, and I'm like gonna have another recommendation. So Cancel Me Daddy with Caitlin Burns and Oliver Ash Klein. They take on cancel culture and like why it's such a joke and like what are y'all talking about? Anyway, this week's episode,
because no one's been canceled and
Yes.
they all
So they
make
talk
millions of
about
dollars.
the cancel grift economy, which is amazing. But this week's episode reached a special place for me. It had, funny enough, the host of like both of these other podcasts that I just talked about, Michael Hobbs, on it, talking about the trial, which I have been avoiding like the plague.
God, this has been crazy. I mean, the amount that this society hates women is out of
he
this
really
world.
takes on like,
it is out of this world.
Y'all, this is like the most clear-cut case of abuse, like the most well-documented. And like, if you read the like British court case, which he did, like, he's like, anyway, it was just like really great. I, for like health reasons, like just mental health reasons, have like checked out. I can't follow it, but I have been shocked by some of the things I've seen people that I know like post on social, and I'm just like, really, y'all? Like,
it's like an international gaslighting.
It leads into like a couple things of like, the people don't really understand intimate partner violence and like all the ways it expresses itself and like the whole range of it, and misogyny. Like, it's just like this like crash course in all of it at the same time. So I really love that. And then,
let me pause for two reasons. One, so that if your listeners are wondering, like, do I understand what intimate partner violence is? Am I in a situation that I maybe didn't think was intimate partner violence because it didn't fit some like really clear cut definition I had in my mind? I just want to remind people that they can call the National DV hotline anytime at 1-800-799-7233 to talk with someone confidentially, whether or not you think right in this moment, oh, it's not that bad, whatever.
That bad.
So just reminding people of that. Yeah. It's not, it's not this thing, which is clearly DV.
Thank
so it's
you.
not that.
I appreciate
so I just want to remind people that like, it is out there.
Talk. There's
Google,
chat.
if you're in a safe
chat on their website.
There's chat. Super easy. And like, get some more information. And also so that you have more information about what you might be seeing in other people and how you can support. Jennie, these are all extremely educational podcasts. And I've got to say,
okay, so the next one I was going to say was, how did this get made? I love that podcast. Yes. No, that makes me super happy. And then You Must Remember This by Karina Longworth. I grew up watching like a lot of old Hollywood movies because that is my mother's jam. Like, if there's a Cary Grant movie, I am sure I have seen it. That is like her favorite. I was joking when I came back from being in Wisconsin at Christmas time that I forgot that movies came in color. So I really love the You Must Remember This podcast, which looks at old Hollywood. I mean, although right now she is looking at sex in the 80s. So it's sex on screen in the 80s,
so
but like
brand.
Also very on brand, yes.
How Did You Get Made is a podcast where they look at movies that are like so absurd, and then they just talk about them being like, how did this happen? And it's amazing. It is so hilarious. It's just so funny. Our pop culture. Yeah. Woof.
I love that podcast. They're all so funny. I guess I'll stop there. Yeah.
It's important. It's important to have outlets. I mean, it's important to learn. It's always important to learn. Everybody go keep learning. And it's important to have good outlets where you can actually just laugh your head off at like really bad
and
cinema.
Some of them are like so bad. I'm like, well, now do I need to see this? Because like, it sounds like horribly terrible.
For sure. And we should do a viewing party actually together when we're feeling like when the caseload is down, or we'll do it outside like in these COVID times, and then like listen to the thing and then do a screening. That'd be fun.
There's like some ones with dinosaurs that I've just been like, what is
they're bonkers. And you think to yourself, this can't possibly get made, and then you remember every David Hasselhoff movie. So highly recommend. I am much less erudite in my podcasting. I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to yours, and I listen to Dear Hank and John, which is John and Hank Green. Which is also funny and very sweet. It's like it's about as sincere as I get ever in terms of like emotional sincerity. But I love Gaze at the National Parks, GAZE at the National Parks, which is a podcast, which I always thought was GAYS, the National Parks, because that is also its brand. But if anyone even has a passing love of national parks, this is a great podcast. And then I listen to like a Star Trek improv podcast.
Fun.
Yeah, it's like it's done now, which makes me really sad because I know there's an end. I got it's
Yeah.
really late, like it's older, but like yeah, I love it. Like so, this is again, I come home and I watch cartoons, so I'm like, no, we
Okay,
need
so
to
on like
unplug.
fun
So I totally
ones,
recommend
I
it.
haven't started it yet, but I've been like, I was thinking I wanted to do a rewatch of True Blood, which I never finished. But I was like, it got too weird, and
scary
so
for
I
me.
didn't do it. And so, but there's now a True Blood podcast with the woman who played Pam and the woman who played Jessica. And I was like, oh my God, this sounds like something I would love to like watch an episode, listen to the podcast.
Oh,
So I
that's a
might
fun
do
idea.
that.
I watched some of True Blood at the beginning and it's got so intense. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it got a little wild and I was like, and
really
I think I'm going to check out now.
Yeah, like again, I'm not. If people like it, great, have at it. But I was like, holy moly, this is getting too crazy. I think part of that's age, right? I'm just aging out of anything sharp edged these days. But the other thing I love, if you've never listened to it,
yes,
pump that right in my brain. Especially if I'm like COVID, haven't done a load, but like I used to listen to that all the time on planes because. First of all, you put your earphones in, you're like, please don't talk to me. This is the universal sign of don't talk to me. And then like he just like the stories are so good that he chooses. And of course his voice is just so wonderful. He's such a good narrator. So another good podcast to recommend to folks.
Yeah. I also
After
love
you
it
listen
to like
this one,
go
find some
to
of these
sleep.
others.
Like I love like having podcasts like playing when I'm going to sleep. So I've used that for that. And then there's one called Sleep With Me that is like basically a guy gets on mic and he'll like recap. He's done like Star Trek episodes or he did like some Doctor Who episodes and he just like talks and wanders and rambles. He's just like
he's got that sort of sweet low
so that is a delightful for like trying to fall asleep podcast.
I mean, these are good recs for everyone. Movement, stay hydrated, stay joyful, take some time off. Jennie, it has been such a joy to be able to talk with you. One of the major, obviously, just for everyone's life is the inability to sort of get together in person.
I know.
And so I've missed seeing you, even though we actually worked very close. Our buildings are like 2 blocks away. But it's so good to talk to you. And I'm just so excited to be on your podcast and be able to like take the reins so that you can actually tell us more instead of being the great interviewer, the great interviewee. Well,
Tara, thank you so much for doing this. I had so much fun talking to you. I mean, as we always do. And I cannot wait to have you back on soon because y'all just released a new report that I will have you come talk all about because it is super important.
Oh yeah. So we'll everybody grab a glass of water, everyone, and some snacks, and have listened to a good light podcast because then we'll talk about, the sort of serious situation facing Indigenous women here in the US. But there's always something people can do, right? And that's the other thing is like you learn and then you think, whoa, that's the most screwed up thing I've ever heard in my life. And then you take action and you do the thing. So speaking of the most screwed up thing we've ever heard in our lives, everybody, stay safe, stay sane.
Thank you.
Drink more water. Brace yourself. We're all in it in the long haul. This is our life's work.
We will get through this.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jennie. Thank you, everyone who's listening. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, that you share it on social media, and that you come back again.
Oh my God, you're hired.
We'll see you then.
Okay, y'all. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tarah. I am so, so grateful for her to do this. I really, really appreciate it. She is just the absolute best. So thank you, Tarah. With that, if you have anything you would like us to cover, or if you have any questions, you can always shoot me an email at jennie@reprosfightback.com, or you can find us on social media at Repros Fight Back on Facebook and Twitter, or Repros FB on Instagram. Otherwise, I will see y'all in 2 weeks. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at reprosfightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Repros Fight Back and on Instagram at Repros FB. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.